And so what I want to do next week is, I don't really have anything booked for the week of Thanksgiving, but I'm planning on being here except for Thanksgiving Day, so I'm going to do something on the Friday after Thanksgiving. But I want to do a lot of history next week.
Okay.
I think it's a time for us to do that. So a lot of those historical things that you brought up, whatever day you want to come on next week, you can have a full hour and we're going to talk history. And so I really want to donate one of those days to the historical things that you have brought up. There was something that came up with Aaron Slate when he was in here for Veterans Day. We talked a little bit about the history of the Marine Corps. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about just really the history and the foundations of our country from a faith perspective. So I'm going to be, and this is like over next week. That's what you're going to get next week, is a lot of historical stuff. And some days I'll have a guest. Some days I may not, because I can talk all day about this stuff, as long as I've got my notes in front of me, because I wish I could recall this stuff. I wish I had one of those brains that I could just spit it out, all the facts. But there's a lot of things that I find interesting that I think you'll find interesting as well. So just kind of, file it away as far as our listeners, and say, hope you'll join us next week for One Street Over. And we're going to talk a lot of history. So, and there's a few local folks around here that I'll reach out to if they want to join me too, that are big history buffs, and you know who you are. But anyway, so whatever day works for you next week, talk to Malik about that and let me know. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, since we only have a half hour and we have several things we want to cover, what is it you want to talk about today? What is on the top of your mind that you want to cover today? So, because you sent me a lot of stuff, and I'm gonna let you drive this and tell me where you want to go.
So much to talk about, but with the limited time that we have, I really want to talk about my perspective.
Okay.
And the perspectives that I have received talking to the community,
Right.
both in Robertson and Davidson County. And I'm just know, U-Turn, I'm working really hard to bring people on the show.
I know
Because
you
I
are.
don't want to be the spokesperson. I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind.
Yeah.
But I do want people in the community that I connect with, that I talk with, to jump on the show so that we can have an authentic conversation.
Yeah.
But until that happens, you have to bear with me. I'm
We got
serving as the medium.
John.
And, yeah, so just my perspective, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So the bottom line is that there's two questions that come to my mind. One is, what does it mean to be an American?
Wow. Okay.
So, we had a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay,
But
okay.
what does it mean to be an American?
Okay.
Do you believe you are an American?
Okay.
And do you believe in America?
Nice.
Those three things.
Okay.
If we don't get that down pat, regardless of what we're talking about or what we're doing,
Right.
it's going to be challenges.
Okay.
And just so for me, what does it mean to be American? For me,
Okay.
as a so-called Black African American male.
Right.
For me, it's about having the right to be a human being, to have, from my experience overall, the right to be a human being, to be able to pursue life, liberty, and property as equally as the next man or woman.
Right.
And this is all I know. This is all I know. I humbly say to all other countries, I'm sure they're great, but this country, America, is where it's at. This is
Patriots across the globe are going.
I just don't know what else to say.
And I'm so proud to hear you say that.
I don't
Absolutely.
know. We have legislation, we have the democracy process, we have, different resources for court and reform and things of that nature. Not a lot of countries are doing that. And I say humbly, a lot of people are moving or wanting to move to America just for that reason. And so for me, this is something that we have to preserve as best we can. Now, with that being said, being a spiritual man, I do want to recognize, and this is what we can get into next week, I want to recognize, the system and the experience before modern America came. Meaning that there were Native Americans. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there were Native Americans here, and I do feel that we do have to recognize and acknowledge that. Because if I say, hey, I love America, this is the place to be, for me, I can feel that there could be Native Americans. And on my mom's side of the family, from Alabama, Jackson County, Alabama, that side of the family goes back to the Native Americans, from my understanding, according to my elders that are 91 plus years old.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
I do want to make sure that we recognize that, but in that acknowledgement, I do want to make sure that at least young folks are aware that this is truly the #1 place on earth.
Amen.
And I want to open with that, and any questions or concerns for me? I have a whole lot here.
Well, and it's beautiful to hear that, because unfortunately, as you see the light being shined on a lot of people that are given a platform right now, it's very anti-American. And it's so beautiful to hear you promoting that thought. And I love that. I love that. So with that said, how you were talking about the ability to pursue equality and things like that. Do you feel that you have all those opportunities in front of you?
I do.
Do you feel you have limits?
I don't feel that I have limits, no. But I am aware that the color of my skin, for some,
Right.
Can cause me challenges.
Okay.
To this day, if I can be honest with you, to this day, my son would say, keep your hood off your head. You know, and it's just the reality. I mean, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but until, we know for sure that we take labels off,
Right.
and we are American citizens that see the highest standard for one another, I just can't take any chances. But I don't hold that against nobody. I'm not upset. No one's stopping me from doing anything. And again,
Right.
One of my disclaimers is, Black America is such a diverse web within a diverse web, which is within the American system.
Right.
And so a lot of Black Americans may not agree with me right now. So I want to be humble to them. But for me, I've been fortunate, for my family upbringing, for them to instill in me that, hey, in this country, no one's stopping you from doing anything.
Amen.
Not even as parents, we cannot stop you, and we're telling you that whatever you put your mind to in this geographical location, we can do it. And congratulations in advance on getting it done. Just got to put the work in.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that, and the beauty of it. And the thing that you said about kind of setting the seed about what happened with the Native Americans and being a Black American, there is no doubt we have got such a painful history in those regards that we can talk about next week when we start talking about the historical parts of it. But my concern is that historically all we're teaching a lot of our children is the difficult history, and not teaching them the beautiful history, not teaching them the full story. And to get the full story of a place like America, you've got to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly, and emphasis on the greatness of America and the beauty of who the founders were, even in their faults. Absolutely. And the beauty of redemption for this country. And I've talked a lot about how that I believe as we were founded with a covenant with God. Whenever President George Washington was elected, it was with prayer, and they committed themselves to a covenant with God. But one of those things is that they were going to end slavery, and they didn't get it done. And I believe the Civil War is a direct result of the fact that we fell out of covenant with God. And I believe now we have fallen out of covenant with God because of abortion. And that is my opinion, and they are my own, and don't necessarily express the views and ownership of this radio station. But I am thoroughly convinced of it. And so, with that said, but we have to look at the whole picture.
Absolutely.
And now, where you are right now, the beauty of the opportunity out there, it's amazing.
America, the information age, I mean, all of those things are at our fingertips.
You bet.
To get anything that we can conceive, any idea, we can put into action. I mean, it's a beautiful time. Even though it's shaky, it's a beautiful time for an American human being right now.
Amen. 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 Very well said. Very well said. Well, now, do you want to elaborate on that, or do you want to?
What points?
Okay. Okay.
But I will say, President George Washington warned that political parties would lead to division and fighting amongst the people.
Oh yeah.
And for me, that's all I see. I've been involved in civics for 5 years, and prior to my 5 years of experience, I did not want to get involved because all I saw were adults bickering, fighting, going back and forth. And from my experience, I was seeing that in my daily life, and so it made me lose hope. It made me. I was 29, 28. Imagine 6-year-olds and 10-year-olds and all that.
What they're saying.
What they're saying.
Kids are saying.
What they're saying. So how can we continue to keep the brand and the culture going if we are literally dishonoring each other as Americans? And more importantly, I say humbly, you have foreign influence looking at this. And if that crack is open, I say this humbly, but if that crack is open, that's all that's needed to change the whole system. And I believe that we're putting this burden on ourselves. And as an individual that considers himself a leader, and I know you consider yourself a leader, or anyone else that considers themselves a leader, we have to have these dialogues. So I'm so grateful that you called me up, sit down, and hey, not only can you join the show, but can you invite people from the community? We need to go ahead and bridge this gap.
Right, I agree, absolutely. So with all that said, how do you feel about what's going on right now? How do you feel about what that's doing? I mean, you were talking about how the door's been cracked and it's an opening for other countries to see the division. How are you perceiving that?
I feel right now with the election, in my heart, the investigation is underway, and that's all we can do right now.
Okay.
That's. I mean, for me to sit there and say anything more would just be adding fuel to the fire, and I would advise anyone on either side, let's just allow the process. If you're a faith-based person,
yes,
allow the process, to work itself out. And assuming everything is done integrally now,
yeah,
I'm sure we can move forward as a team.
I think so too.
If things are done integrally. I pray they are.
Yeah.
I expect them to be.
Yeah, me too. And that's the thing, is waiting for the process. And one of some of the things you sent me is, the vitriol over, President Trump not conceding. Well, there's no reason for him to concede until the election is certified. And there's way too many questions right now to certify the election. And the mainstream media is not giving you the full story. There's some, you talk about the cracks that are from the other countries. I'm greatly concerned about the things in the media regarding the voting machines that were devised to help Hugo Chavez come to power in Venezuela. And those are the same machines that are being used here. And one of the attorneys for President Trump, Sidney Powell, she has been talking. I don't know if you've seen the interviews with Sidney Powell, with Lou Dobbs especially. If you have not seen Lou Dobbs and Sidney Powell, go and watch that, because what she talks about and the evidence of the concerns, huge concerns when it comes to the voting machines. Forget all the things that happened that people are saying that were amiss in regards to the mail-in balloting and all that. I'm talking voting machines that were designed for Hugo Chavez to alter election results electronically. If that has happened in this country, dear God, and I mean, if they can prove that, Donovan, here's my concern and my great prayer, and we all need to be on our knees for this, because if they can prove that, not only could it destroy the parties, which might not necessarily be a bad thing, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very upset about it, and I mean, it could get real ugly.
Absolutely.
And so, a lot of people say, well, let's just certify it and go on. Well, we can't, because this is something. The things that have been concerned about these voting machines dominion, concerns have been raised by both sides of the aisle. And because there was some concern from the Democrat Party that they were being used to manipulate who would win their primaries and things like that. So there's some great concern there. And if it's true what some of the things that Sidney Powell is saying, it's real scary that it's here in America. The things that we were like, well, how can Venezuela let that happen? How can Cuba pretend that they had a free and fair election when we know full well they didn't? Well, it almost appears we're doing the same thing. You're talking about the people who come here that are wanting to come to America. I've got a lot of friends that are immigrants, a lot of Egyptian friends. And so many of them reached out to me that were able to vote for the first time in this election. They were so excited. They're new citizens voting for the first time. And they're like, Lavern, if we had known that this is what we were going to be a part of, we would have stayed in Egypt. Because they're like, you guys are doing what's been going on across the world, and they're greatly concerned. So we've got to have the investigation, but we've got to be on our knees praying for this country that calm will be present, that number one, truth will be known.
Absolutely. I mean, that's
the equalizer is truth.
That's it. I mean, and the prayer, like you said, is so important right now. I mean, so important. Assuming that faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
So those two go hand in hand.
You bet.
And more importantly, I don't want to say shame, but if those things were done, without integrity, I mean, those are the messages that children, young folks see today. So you don't tell me anything about selling drugs, or don't tell me anything about whatever it is that not you personally or anyone in particular
Right.
is advocating. But if we are not able to, as adults, move forward with integrity, it makes the whole message of living with standard hard for everyone, because it just looks like, well, we're in survival mode at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's one of the, and I'm kind of jumping off topic here, but one of the biggest concerns for all of us that we have had in regards to our president. I love President Trump and many of the things that he has accomplished. He has done what he said he was going to do. But the way he acts on Twitter and the way I have said many times, my biggest problem with President Trump is the fact that he does things that I would have disciplined my children for when they were younger. And so, like you said, it's very hard for us as adults to say, don't do this, and then we over here, we can't even run a fair election.
Absolutely.
And so that was the great concern I've always had with President Trump. And again, love the man on so many levels, but I really wish he would act more presidential. And if as a Republican, as a conservative, we lose the control of the presidency, of the executive branch, I believe, if legitimately we have lost control of the executive branch, I think it is singularly because he would not act presidential. I believe that with all my heart. If it comes down that with a fair count, Joe Biden is our next president, I believe that cost us the executive branch. I really do. But with that said, honestly, I'm greatly concerned about what's going on with the voting machines, more than anything else, more than absentee ballots being counted late or coming in and being fraudulent. More than any of that, it appears that electronically there is some really bad stuff going on, and we're talking about 80% of the votes in America are connected to these machines, and this is going to the Supreme Court, y'all.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, because the lower courts, some of them are politically motivated. They're going to shut it down. It's going to be appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. Get ready for it, and it could. I think it could come down to the Supreme Court going, we got to do a do-over.
I hear you.
And can you imagine what that's going to do to the mood of the country? Or it could go to the Congress. It has to, because constitutionally, it could come to the Congress and say, you got to decide.
Absolutely.
Wow. The scenarios constitutionally that could play out that are historical, it's crazy. It's crazy.
That's why I said, okay, what do I say and where do I start? That's why I have all these papers.
Yeah.
It shakes the very foundation of what we're talking about.
You bet.
And if you don't have to jump into a advertisement, I do want to say
we're good.
Okay.
I'll do one in a second.
Awesome.
Okay.
I do want to say, and again, this is why it's very important for those that talk with me to come join the show.
You bet.
I don't want to twist anyone's words around, but I've
Right.
heard, young folks, young black men and women come to me and have a conversation and say, hey, it's nothing, for me, I voted for, quote unquote, President-elect Joe Biden, but he doesn't do anything for me. He does not wow me, he does not woo me, he does not, traditionally from the national or international stage, with all due respect to President-elect, he doesn't bring that to the table, but the reason I voted for him is, like you said, because of what the President Trump has said in his demeanor, and it's thrown me off. And that's why, I'm voting for this guy. And I've heard people, even on the conservative side, come to me and say, well, Danavan, a president's job is not to try to impress you or try to be friends with you, But as we can see, that emotion, if you will, really was used during this campaign. And I think that one simple piece, and I said this humbly to the president, that one simple piece put him in a tougher position really that he needs to be in.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really huge thing for you to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do need to do an ad before I run out of time. And I will say one thing. The one thing that I would, the calling President Biden the president-elect, until the election is certified, he is the presumed, president-elect. But that officially doesn't happen until, it's just like, I get so tired of the news media. Well, we've called it. Yeah. You don't get to call it. It's the constitutionally until mid-December, whenever they get together and they cast the votes for the Electoral College, that is when it's certified. Once it is certified, I'll call him president-elect. But until then, and I will call him president, I don't like him. I don't like him. But I will honor the office of president. It's gonna be, I mean, that man, I got some real concerns about Mr. Joe Biden, but we won't get into that right now. And one thing too, well, I'm sorry, I'm about to chase rabbits. So let me go ahead and talk about Corbin Creek Greenhouse, Gifts, Nursery, and Gardening. Absolutely, absolutely, that's perfect. And again, next week's going to be a lot about history. Now, I may have something pop up that just we have to, look at, but we're going to do a lot of stuff about some history as we build up to Thanksgiving, because to me we're going to talk about the history of Thanksgiving and some of that kind of stuff too as we get into the week next week. So Wednesday next week is yours, and look forward to having you for the full hour then. But now we've got just about 5 minutes for, is Gina, I don't even know if Gina's walked in yet, but as Gina comes in here, what else have you got for me that you want to talk about?
Well, one, point well taken on the presumed presidential elect.
Yeah.
That's good for me to know.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify that, because I know people listening are going, he's not the president
Yeah,
elect.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to be integral with this whole process. That boils down to even those, and this is what I don't get. You have those that are in the media or corporations or elected officials already saying, "Hey, president-elect, president should concede." This is what confuses me as a young American.
Right.
It just confuses me.
Sure, and it's meant to confuse. It's called propaganda. It's called propaganda. And research that word and what that meant to Germany. And propaganda is a real thing, and you've got a complacent media right now, mainstream media. You've got the folks at Facebook and Twitter. The CEOs of Facebook and Twitter have been they've been before Congress, Senate, I guess, specifically being interviewed regarding whether or not they are a publisher or an editor, because as a publisher, they have protections from the government that says you can't sue them because they're just disseminating information, they're not responsible for it, but they've been acting as an editor. And so that means that they're saying, well, you can talk, but you can't. And they very intentionally shut some things down regarding former Vice President Biden prior to the election to protect him, is what it seemed. And if they can prove that congressional in the Congress, and of course depending on who ends up winning all the elections will determine, because it's just so it's an abomination. It's not. It needs to be constitutional, and it's not. It's so partisan. But I think they're set to get their protections removed as a publisher, and if that happens, boy, they're opening up a whole flood of lawsuits for things that they say and do. Prager University, one of the ones. That's one thing we're going to talk. We're talking about these Dominion machines and the history of those and how they are connected to Venezuela. That's one thing I want to talk about next week. Is I want us to look at Venezuela and what happened with the rise of Hugo Chavez, and I want us to really look at that and the connection that has to the Dominion voting machines and the software that was specifically designed to help him alter the election results. And it's proven. There's a Prager University is one that, like I said, is suing Facebook because they're throttling them and not pushing out their message. But Prager also has excellent video from somebody who grew up in Venezuela, who talks about the rise of Hugo Chavez and what it did to absolutely destroy that country. I have friends in Venezuela, and they talk about watching their country go from being a promising, a promising, beautiful country, with a type of democracy, to an absolute, just a pit of despair because of socialism and communism. And to hear them talk about it, just tears coming to their eyes because they watched it, and they're warning us, don't go there. And so we're going to talk about that specifically, but if you want to see, just go to PragerU and put Venezuela and socialism and watch that. It'll blow your mind. But those are some of the things we're going to cover next week. And is Gina out there? Did you see her come in?
I did not.
Okay, well, she'll be here in a minute, but we can talk until she gets here, then we'll take an ad.
She just walked in.
She just walked in, so we'll probably, you got any parting thoughts as we finish up here, Donovan? And we'll have you back in next Wednesday.
Yes, I do want to say publicly congratulations to Miss Holt for an outstanding job for Springfield. I had a chance to connect with her and Ryan Martin not too long ago and to speak peace and prosperity over them. And I want to just thank my wife, my kids for all they do, and just who they are in my life. And I just want you to join me again just to speak prosperity, peace, and all abundance to every American here, and we give thanks for everything working out for good. And while we're on that subject, I speak peace and prosperity to the people of the world as well.
I love you. You're just so awesome. I just love Danavan Hylton. Tell them how to get in touch with you and what you do, what you can do to help them professionally. Tell them what you do.
Absolutely. So if you're looking to increase your customer base or your presence in the community, particularly within diverse communities and markets, you want to reach out to me. I do make sure that I'm connected to every government agency, elected official, business owner, as well as community leader in the public, private, and volunteer sectors, really in Tennessee, and we're growing. What I would like to be one day is officially serve as a senior advisor to world business leaders and country leaders as well. For reasons such as this, we have to be on the same page. We have to make sure our work is integral from the very beginning. If not, you will lose people. If that's your aim, then that's fine. But if you don't want to lose people, I'm learning the process, and there's certain ways that you have to conduct yourself in the system. So. Thank you for having me.
I love you. I love you. He'll be back with me next Wednesday. And get ready, because One Street Over next week is going to be a lot of history. So get ready. We'll have to reach out to my friend Bill Jones, get him out here in here for sure, because he's a historical guy. And I'm very excited for the historical stuff that you and I want to talk about. Absolutely. Very foundational stuff about as we came together as America, and so we're gonna take a deep dive next week. Don't you think?
I'll send you some of my thoughts so we can start working on
that.
Things
Sounds great. That sounds great. Thank you, Danavan Hylton, and be sure to reach out to him. Tell him your phone number again, and say it twice.
My phone number, you can reach me on my cell, 615-499-6031. 615-499-6031. www.e. the letter E, numerical number 1, connect.com if you want to find me online.
All right, thank you so much. And that's Danavan Hylton, and thank you for joining me. We're going to make the switch while I'm doing a little ad and let Miss Gina Hope come in here for the next